And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Okay, moving on to today's surface map again. Weak low out here over the Aleutians with not much wind associated with that. And the stronger low here moving up to Kodiak Island, weakening now, but gale and storm force winds today. And down along the coast, gale force winds will tonight diminish considerably as that low, or for tomorrow, Sunday, damps out into a trough here. A couple of troughs keeping the shower activity going over the Panhandle and across all of southern Alaska. Scattered thunderstorms here in the interior and dry for the north slope, but winds coming down considerably from what they were today here along the North Gulf Coast into the Panhandle. And then for Monday, next system here really keeps the stronger winds still in the northeast Pacific, but rain will start to increase along the Panhandle and it stays cloudy and showery over southern Alaska with thunderstorms over the eastern interior, isolated to scattered thunderstorms there, possibly up to the Brooks Range here in the Anatuvik Pass area. Dry with light winds out over the Bering Sea. And for the coastal water forecast here, we'll see for tomorrow, west-southwest winds on the south coast, 15 to 20 knots, central coast, southwest at 20. And for the north coast, south to southeast winds at 25 knots. Small craft advisories still for Lynn Canal. Southeast winds 25, gusts of 40 knots, especially early in the day. And south winds 20 knots for Stevens Passage, Clarence Strait, looking at south winds at 15 knots. And then for Monday, south to southeast winds 15 knots for the inside waters. And out along the coast, south coast here, southwest at 15 knots, south 15 for the central coast, east-southeast 15 to 25. For the north coast. And for Cook Inlet tomorrow, north to northwest winds 15 knots, seas 4 feet. South winds at 20 knots for Kamishak Bay. Small craft advisories for the Barren Islands, western North Gulf Coast for southwest winds at 25 knots. And around Middleton Island, look for south winds at about 20 knots. And for Prince William Sound, southeast winds 20 knots, seas 4 feet. And then on Monday, Prince William Sound, southeast at 15. North Gulf Coast, Barren Islands, east winds 20 knots. Kamishak Bay, southern Cook Inlet, northeast at 15. Northern Cook Inlet, north at 10. Kodiak Island, small craft advisories for Sunday. Southwest winds 30 knots. Alaska Peninsula, southwest winds 10 to 25 knots. Southwest 25 for Bristol Bay. And then for Monday, here for Kodiak Island, northeast winds at 20 knots. Otherwise, the Alaska Peninsula looking at variable winds at 5 to 15 knots with seas running 2 to 4 feet. Light south wind at 10 knots for Bristol Bay. And moving on to the western Aleutians tomorrow, north winds at 15 knots with seas 4 to 5 feet. Light variable winds here for Adak and Atka with 2 to 5 foot seas. Light variable winds for Unalaska Island, but Unimak Island south to southeast at 15 knots. And then for Monday, eastern Aleutians, westward to Amchitka Island, light variable winds at 10 knots there. And from Kiska to Shemya, northwest winds 15 knots. Perlofts, variable winds at 10 tomorrow, northwest 15 St. Matthew Island, St. Lawrence Island, Yukon Delta Coast, south at 10, northeast 15 for Norton Sound, southwest 15 here for the Kuskokwim Delta coastline. And for Monday, Pribilofs, St. Matthew Island, variable winds at 10 knots, south winds 20 knots, Yukon Delta Coast, St. Lawrence Island, and about 15 knots from the south for Norton Sound, as well as the Kuskokwim Delta Coast. Eastern Beaufort Sea coast for tomorrow, northeast at 15 knots, 3 foot seas, turn east at 15 on the central coast, west side northeast at 20. Small craft advisories for the Chukchi Sea for north to northeast winds 25 to 30 knots. And they'll swing around to the south and southwest on Monday, come down to 15 knots over 2 to 5 foot seas. East-northeast 20 knots, western Arctic coast. And the central and east side looking at east winds at 15 knots with seas running 3 to 4 feet.